Hey guys, and welcome to Copter's exclusive YouTube Live. Drone rogues? Wow, you will be if you're flying without a license or a A2 CofC. But no, Drone Regs Explained with our head of training and Duncan and Jamie, one of our UV strategists. You may have seen them before when we've done this. This is going to be a regular thing for us. Every month we'll be unpacking drone regs, just making sure that you have all the information and knowledge you need to keep up to date and operating safely and securely. You don't want the police after you, because that's the new powers that they got with the bill that passed a couple of weeks ago. They can now do stop and search. Now, obviously, this is what the drone regs have been brought to do, to make sure that you're compliant and fly safely. But I'll leave it to the experts to tell you all about it. My name's Kev, I'm in the marketing team, and this is Bex, she's also in the marketing team.
Hi guys, I'll be able to answer any questions today, so if you just pop them in the chat, I'll be able to...
On the stars of the show, Duncan and Jamie. Let's do this.
Right, hi guys, thanks for joining us today. So a great introduction from the team. We're going to be walking through the regulations. There's loads and loads of questions. We've got plenty to go over, loads of new things in terms of, get rid of that, loads of new things going on in terms of the regulations. They're constantly changing, so we're going to go over as much as we can today. Any questions, give us a shout and we can run over it. Duncan, do you want to jump on and get rid of this?
Sure, absolutely. Welcome everybody to whoever's joining this webinar. It's great to meet. It's quite a recurring thing and something which we're certainly going to continue to do going forward. And obviously going forward, we'll always offer this as a free session. So to tell you a bit about myself, so I work in the training team here at Copters. So as the head of training within that role, I oversee Copters Academy. I work with quite a large range of our professional instructors, but we also work with a huge amount of leaders in different industries, industry experts, to ensure that we can always continue to bring you guys the best courses that you need to ensure that everyone's operating at the utmost competence as we can.
So it's fun. Yeah, so I'm Jamie Corden. You might have seen me on some of the other webinars that we've done recently, such as starting your business, some of our different bundles that we have. Generally, I've been working with Copters for just over 2 years now, helping yourselves, businesses, people get into this really exciting and raw industry. So generally, there's 3 pillars with drones. So saving time, saving money, and making processes safer. And that's what drones are all about. We might have a conversation in the future. We might have already had one. This today's pretty much everyone really. There's lots of confusion, and I hope this will be one of the first steps to getting it. So,
Absolutely.
Exactly, that's all right. Okay, so in terms of regulations then, which is obviously the main topic. So what does it actually mean for me getting into the industry? If you're new coming into this industry, or if you're changing drones, you're changing the way you're operating, this will essentially hopefully answer all your questions. What course do I actually need to sit? Do I even need to do one? Again, how am I operating? What drones do I have? There's so many different questions now. It's no longer clean and cut. Do you do it commercially? Do you not? It's completely different now. So these rules and regulations, there's lots of ways we can make this better for everyone. And we can interpret them and take advantage in a lot of ways. So yeah, they are actually really, really exciting and different. So it's just all about understanding them, and so we can get the best out of it for you. How much does it cost? Loads of different answers to that now. So there's loads of different courses, loads of different training that we can do. So yeah, it's just all going to be what is going to be best for you, what's going to be best for your drone, how do you operate your drone, and we'll go from there. But yeah, we'll answer all these questions when we get going. So just a quick overview of what we're going to do today in terms of the different categories that we have. So we've got the open category, we'll be touching on the A2 course, the A2 CofC. We can then go on to the specific category, which is where the GDC course is, which some of you may have done the PFCO who are on this today. Very, very similar in what they are, and we'll make some comparison kind of opinions and talks about that later as we walk through it all. And then finally, we've got the certified. We don't need to worry about this one just too much, but again, we'll go into more detail a little bit later on so everyone completely understands what's going on there. And then we'll be touching on the categories as well. So all the different categories that are going to fall into. At the moment, I'm not too sure about you, Duncan, but I'm getting loads of questions on this one. So yeah, not all the information's out there at the moment. So yeah, this will clear you up in terms of where we are at the moment. And then hopefully it'll give us a better idea to make these decisions moving forward in terms of if you're looking to buy a drone, what's going to be best for you in the future. It's all about eliminating risks and seeing what is going to be best for you moving forward. So yeah, the more answers you have, we can make better decisions moving forward in this industry. So yeah, this is what we'll cover and what we'll go from there.
Absolutely, and I think I suppose it's worth noting. Obviously, whilst at Copters we are a Copters Academy, we're a training provider. We also sell kit as well. But the purpose of this specific webinar is to give as much impartial, transparent advice as we can to hopefully kind of help people understand the regulations a bit more. So if there is anything specific that you don't quite understand or you want a bit more clarification on, obviously we've got Beck in the background here who is able to record your questions, and then when we get to the end, we will have a Q&A element. Now, if we can't answer everybody's question, we might need to get back to you by email or bring it up in the next webinar, but hopefully we can answer everything throughout this. I think certainly over the new year, there's been such a huge shift in regulations. It's never been more exciting, it's never been more transparent and affordable in order to be able to actually operate in this industry. We've gone from where if you wanted to operate commercially, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, you had to pay very close to £2,000 for a course, whereas now you can get it. I mean, essentially, if you use our A2 CofC course for an example, which might not work for everybody, but for certain people with a smaller aircraft, it could be something you're looking for. Well, that course is free of charge to actually go on. Then if you do decide to get to the end and you want to do the actual test and the certificate, then it's £49 plus VAT. So there's never been a more affordable time and accessible time to get into the industry.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, there is quite a lot of negativity around this at the moment. It is change. It's always going to be that case, but hopefully through webinars and different bits of information that Copters will put out, whether that's today or later, or stuff that you haven't seen on our blogs, for example, there's so much opportunity in this industry, and these new regulations will open up these opportunities. But yeah, let's crack on. We'll get into some more detail.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to kind of summarise, obviously over the year, the UK has adopted the EASA drone regulations. New drone classes have been introduced for the open category, ranging from C0 to C4, and we'll go into a bit of detail about what that means later on. Primarily based on the weight of the aircraft, but as I'm saying, no aircraft currently have these markings, so we all fall into what we call the transitional or the legacy classes. The transitional period runs from December 31st to December 31st, December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2022, which allows our current aircraft, without any specific markings, they're not CE rated, allows us to continue flying them in line with the new regulations. It also means that we can start getting a lot closer than what we could do before, perhaps. In most cases, UK drone registration is required, and that's something which has been running for quite a few years. There have been elements in ways in the past where some commercial operators have been exempt from obtaining specific approvals, but in terms of the drone registration, we're talking about the DMARES, the flyer ID and the operator ID. It's the groundstone of where you need to start when you buy a drone.
Just to touch on that, Duncan, as well. So when I'm talking to people that are getting into this industry, a lot of people are asking, look, I've got a drone, I know I've been flying it for a while, am I okay to do the A2 CofC or even the GDC before I do that flyer and operator ID?
No, so the flyer ID and the operator ID is the first thing you need to do. So that is the legal requirement. There are elements where specifically the operator ID, again, we'll talk about this later. We've got a couple of examples of different aircraft and where they fit in, and how you display your operator ID, that sort of thing. But you need to do it. The operator ID is free. The flyer ID is free. The operator ID is £9 per year, so it's not a significant cost.
That's it. Yes, so it's that first step, isn't it, essentially?
100%. So in terms of the open category, we'll start talking about that first because it's where the A2 CofC qualification sits, and the majority of our students are adopting that course first, and then if needs be, progressing to the GDC course.
Yeah.
So to operate in the A2 subcategory or the A1 subcategory with the transitional aircraft, you need to obtain a qualification called an A2 CofC, a certificate of competency. And essentially, I suppose we'll go into a bit more detail later on, but at the moment it's all online. There's no practical flight assessment, but you do actually need to go out and get some flying with your aircraft. And the actual examination is theoretical and it's done remotely. However, for operations which can't be performed in the open category, and what we mean by this is if you need to start flying heavier aircraft, or you need to get closer to people, or you need to overfly uninvolved people, or you want to start flying further away than 500 meters, that sort of thing, you need to start operating your aircraft in a specific category. And in the specific category, you have to obtain what we refer to as an operational authorization. It's replaced the PFCO. So whilst last year it was obviously the permission for commercial operation, the equivalent is now the operational authorization.
Which is a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it?
It is, yeah, lots of acronyms, but that's just the way that aviation works, I suppose. So going on a bit more then about this operational authorization. So obviously last year, anyone that wanted to do that would sit a course with us, a theoretical course. They produce an operations manual and they do a practical flight assessment. Well, the name's changed of that course, so we used to call it a CofSU course for small unmanned. All that's happened is the name has been standardized across the industries, so every training provider will provide a GDC course rather than calling it their own. There are a couple of small tweaks to the actual syllabus and a couple of small changes to the flight assessment, but I suppose the foundations stay the same. For anyone that currently has a PFCO, so if you're a current commercial operator, you can continue to renew this. And when you next renew it, it will actually just turn into an operational authorization. But over the next couple of years, you need to make sure that you obtain the GDC qualification before it expires. And the big one really with regards to the change and the shift in regs over the new year is that the EASA and the CAA are classifying flights as how risky they are. So whilst last year, if you were operating as a hobbyist, there was no qualification, you might need to do your flyer ID and your operator ID. If you want to operate as a commercial operator, you need to get the permission for commercial operation, but that doesn't necessarily make any difference to the risk. So the big thing here is the weight. So heavier the aircraft is, the more training is needed, the more competency you need to prove to a training provider to then in return be able to fly closer to people. So obviously there are new categories of operations, so we don't just have leisure and commercial, we've got open, specific and certified. So starting with the open category, it refers to low risk, and what I mean by low risk is either low weight or significant distance away from uninvolved persons. We don't need CAA authorization for this, so if you've just gone and bought an aircraft and you've done your flyer ID and your operator ID, this is where you sit to begin with. You sit in the A3 subcategory, we'll talk about what that means a bit later. You might need to do the A2 CofC if you want to start getting closer to people, certainly flying in congested areas, you need it. The limitations are based on the aircraft's rating or the weight, and the distances are a cylinder, not a bubble. Because there are reduced competency requirements, the authorities are a lot stricter on how close you can get to people, and obviously overflight as well. Moving on to the specific, we've got medium risk flights, and what we mean by that is flying closer to people or flying slightly heavier aircraft that are going to pose more risk. Pretty much the same as the current PFCO as to what they were last year. I mean, the words have changed, there are a couple of different things, but if you currently have a PFCO, when you renew it, it will turn into an operational authorization. The CAA issue this, so we provide you with the recommendation and all of the certificates for passing our training after doing the GDC course with us. Then you actually need to go on and apply to the Civil Aviation Authority for permission. And this is something you have to do yearly. There is also the certified category, but it's not something that we're really going to go into detail in at all. It's not something that anyone needs to kind of concern themselves with.
Yeah, it's not moment. Yeah, all good.
No, it's referring to much heavier aircraft, carriage of dangerous goods, people transport, that sort of thing. Awesome. I suppose what we have at the bottom here is we're talking about the A2 CofC. If you've trained with us, if you've done your PFCO since September 2019 onwards, then we will give you your A2 CofC plus the test free of charge.
That's it. And there's been a few people that have noticed that or they might have done the PFCO before we're online. So yeah, just reach out to us. That might be info@copters.com. But yeah, get on the phones, give us a call. We can soon get you online, soon get you sorted. But yeah, it's very, very quickly done and getting onto our course.
So yeah, it's really important people aren't shortchanged by this shift in regs, and that we help people develop, being a lifetime partner.
Yeah, in terms of new regulations, there's a lot out there, and this A2 CofC course is a really nice way to give yourself a nice understanding. Personally, I've got loads of customers and clients and people that we've worked with that I'm just asking to do the course. It's free of charge. Just take advantage of that information. The CofC Academy is a great learning tool. You'll never get kicked out of it. That's something that you can have. So whether you're out on site and you forget the process and the different details, just say, get online. We'll get you on logged in with your own account, and yeah, just take full advantage of it. It's free training at the end of the day. It's really, really high standard. So yeah, take full advantage of it.
100%. Moving back to the open category then, so talking about the need for an A2 CofC potentially. So pilots flying under the rules of the open category will tend to be hobbyists or recreational flyers. Some of them will be operating commercially, and there are loads of elements and sort of scenarios I can think of where just obtaining an A2 CofC is all you need. It reduces the significant need to get more training. There are downsides to that, I suppose. If you are operating commercially, there are a couple of insurance requirements where you need to obtain compliant insurance. And obviously, we work very closely with a lot of insurance providers, a lot of insurance brokers, and it's something which, if you don't obtain the GDC or if you find something a lot heavier and you don't obtain it, then it is going to cost you a lot more in terms of getting your insurance policy. They quite often put quite a big hike on the premium, just because they haven't proven to anyone their competency. They haven't done no form of testing.
That's right. Yeah. So and we're finding this more and more. To be fair, personally, I'm not sure if you've heard much from, but that when we're speaking to companies that are looking for pilots, that are looking for drone pilots, essentially the new regulations, the GDC, it seems to be heading in the way that is going to be the standard. We are getting, especially like construction. You mentioned the insurance side. In terms of film and media, I've had quite a few people that are looking to do it on paper. Yeah, they only need the A2 CofC. They're out and about. It's very, very safe where they are, but they want to see people do the level of training that they need. So it's one of those. It's about knowing the facts, isn't it? It's about knowing what's going to be best for you in terms of your business, in terms of the drone and performing safely, but then essentially what you need to fly with your drone. So yes, there's a lot to think about now. It's not just a case of do the PFCO, off I go. There's plenty to think about. But yeah, if you do have any questions, we've got back on and get in touch, or just give us a call afterwards as well. But yeah, awesome.
So yeah, in the open category, there are a couple of requirements that we need to adhere to. The aircraft's maximum take-on mass is going to be less than 25 kilos, and that's the same for the specific category as well. Essentially, we don't sell any aircraft and copters that are over that limit anyway. You've got to keep the aircraft within visual line of sight, so you've got to be able to have direct, unaided contact with it. And normally, this is going to be accepted out to about 500 meters. If you did wish to fly further away than this, then there are ways that you can attain the GDC course, and we'll shortly be offering what we're referring to as the bolt-on Module 1 course. This will allow you to fly up to 2 kilometers away from the remote pilot, utilising spotters at 500-meter intervals. So you think of the surveying sector, if they need to survey a huge area of land, that's going to cut time down significantly. The remote pilot can be 2 kilometers that way, but 2 kilometers that way as well. So it's a significant area that they can survey with, effectively a bolt-on course and another submission to the CAA.
Game changer. So for people that don't know, is that something like what we would have known at operational safety cases? Though? Yeah. Okay, awesome. And then again, would that be extended visual line of sight, or would that be beyond?
it gets a bit tricky here because the CA slightly changed the wording on this. So
Okay.
it used to be called beyond visual line of sight, where you can't see the aircraft. And then you've also got extended visual line of sight, where you're using an additional observer with a communication link, such as a radio, to then keep eyes on the aircraft. Now, the CA have replaced the term of EV loss, extended visual line of sight, with BV loss, with visual mitigation,
Okay.
which kind of confuses it a bit. We're just calling it EV loss.
Yeah.
But as far as we're concerned, with the right amount of spotters, you can get further out if you need to do so. It also mentions 400 feet. So that's 400 feet from the Earth's surface, imagining a bit of string attached to the aircraft. There are elements where you can actually fly higher than this, such as flying over a man-made obstacle higher than 105 meters. But there are a couple of requirements for this. You've got to have permission, and you've got to essentially be able to keep within a certain distance. The idea behind this is that, well, I suppose the idea behind both of them is the 400-foot rule is obviously a separation from manned aircraft. So, commonly, except for the purposes of takeoff and landing in military aircraft, etc., most general aviation aircraft can't go lower than 500 feet in a cruise. Obviously, we can't go higher than 400 feet, so it keeps that barrier. But if there are obstacles, that obstacle is obviously already there.
Yeah.
So it does, it's not going to cause much more risk for us to actually fly closer and potentially fly higher than 400 feet, provided we're close to the obstacle. So the open category itself is divided into different subcategories, and this stipulates how close we can get to people and where we can fly. We'll start with the A1, and the A1 is referring to the lighter aircraft, and you might need qualifications to do this, such as the A2 CofC, you might not. It depends on what you're flying with. So drones such as the Mavic Mini and the Mavic Mini 2 can be operated in this category. Now, obviously, you do still have the applicable airspace restrictions that you would have normally, so you're not exempt from them, but you can get a lot closer to people. So, depending on the aircraft, you can actually get, such as flying overhead people and flying as close as you deem safe, provided you adhere to this 1-to-1 rule, which we'll talk about later. With these, with this A1 category, it's commonly just aircraft below 500 grams. So things which, if they were to drop out of the sky, is going to pose less of a threat than something that is 2 or 3 kilograms or even more.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about, it sounds offensive to the drones, but toy drones. So it is a bit offensive, but you can kind of take advantage of this. So we can get really, really close to people in this. We can get very, very close to buildings, etc. So having something like the Mini in your arsenal is actually quite good. So for something like inspection, you need to get up close and personal, or in terms of media, the quality of the image isn't fantastic. It's a great little drone for what it is. We are looking and seeing a lot more people actually have it in their fleet of drones. So yeah, this is one of those opportunities where we can take advantage of the new regulations. Okay, well, just a quick question for you there, then, Doc. In terms of the Mavic Mini, so because of its weight category, do you have to do your operator ID or flyer ID? Would you recommend doing it, or what would be your call on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mavic Mini specifically falls into I suppose it's below 250 grams.
Mm-hmm.
So it falls into the legacy class of aircraft in this A1 subcategory. So we can fly it close to uninvolved persons. You can fly it overhead uninvolved persons. Yeah. In order to do that, though, the first thing you've got to do, obviously, like you said, is obtain the flyer ID and the operator ID. So, and I don't have a Mavic Mini with me at the moment, but we've got a Mavic Enterprise. And the operator ID should look something like this. You need to make sure that you affix it to the top of your aircraft. And on all of our courses, we provide guidance on how you can do that. And obviously, you've got to do that 40-question flyer ID exam as well.
Yeah, spot on. But yeah, good little drone to consider.
Moving on to A2 then, and this is where all of the, I suppose, for those flying Phantoms and Mavics, provided you get the A2 CofC, this is where you sit. You need to obtain that qualification before you can fly here, but it does enable you to fly potentially closer to people depending on what sort of aircraft you have. So, and now we don't have any C2 aircraft at the moment, but once they do come into production, it allows us to fly at 30 meters horizontally from people, or even down to 5 meters in a low speed mode, such as tripod mode. It's not tripod mode specifically. So if you do have a Mavic at the moment, and you think, well, hang on a minute, I've got tripod mode. It's not something which can be done retrospectively. This is referring to new aircraft that haven't come out yet. If you've got an aircraft that weighs below 2 kilos, or more importantly, between 500 grams and 2 kilos, this is where you might sit. So A2 transitional. So weighing up to that 2 kilo mark, you can fly up to 50 meters horizontally from uninvolved persons. You do obviously also have all the other applicable airspace requirements, but as far as how close we can get to people, 50 meters. That's not a bubble, so we can't overfly them. So certainly for flying congested areas, it is quite restrictive. We are allowed to fly in a congested area in the A2 subcategory, but 50 meters of horizontal separation is massive.
Yeah.
And it's something which, for example, flying down the street, you would struggle to adhere to.
Yeah, that's it. It's quiet on the streets at the moment, but it's still going to be a struggle. Again, it's just coming down to that risk. And even with the smaller drones that we're talking about, you can get really, really close to. Do you want to be getting that close? Again, this industry is about risk, it's about safety. Have you put that risk assessment in there? Yes, there's just a lot to think about. So just going through the process, and again, courses will show us how to do this anyway. But yeah, it's
100%. I mean, if you're a hobbyist so predominantly if you're a hobbyist, the majority of people are going to be flying these sorts of aircraft. So, obviously, the registrations, flyer ID, operator ID first. A2 CofC, this is your best bet firstly.
Yeah.
And depending on how big you grow, whether you need larger aircraft or whether you need to fly closer to people, that's when you need to start looking at the specific category.
That's right. So a lot of people, it is that ladder process. So as Duncan just said, we might look at the drone, see what one's going to be best for you in the industry. We'll start with the A2 whilst we're deciding what's going to be best for you. Go through that process. We all have a good or better understanding of where we stand, and then we can go from there. So yeah, step by step, we can just build it up.
100%. Moving on to the A3 then. Well, the A3 subcategory is the most restricted, and this is where you sit by default if you only do your flyer ID and your operator ID, and your aircraft's over 250 grams. So it involves flights far away from people. It's for larger aircraft, and for pilots who have an A1 transitional A2 subcategory aircraft, but you haven't got your qualifications yet. So, whilst you might have a Mavic 2 Enterprise or something like this, well, you can't immediately start flying in the A2 subcategory. It's something which you need to, operate in the A3 first, and then whilst you're doing all the self-monitored training for the CofC qualification, you're operating here. It's only then when you actually do the additional qualification with us, which is when you can jump back sort of up a ladder, I suppose, to the A2, permitting you to fly closer. And by closer, what I mean by A3 is this doesn't allow you to fly in congested areas. So anything substantially used for residential, recreational, business use, that sort of thing, 150 meters away from these areas, and that's really restrictive. It's fine if you're flying in national parks, you're flying into nowhere where you're just doing photographs, that might be okay. If you need to fly close to a house or anything like that, then you're not able to do so in this category.
That's right. And just to go on that point again, so let's say you have even like a Mavic, you're in the middle of nowhere. So what would be the training that someone would have to do for that then?
So let's say, for example, you have a Mavic 2 Enterprise. In order to start flying it, you need to do your operator ID and flyer ID, and you do that on CAA's website. You then are automatically in this A3 subcategory, so no flights from 150 meters away from congested areas. You can't obviously fly restricted airspace, etc., without the appropriate permission, like you would in any of them. If you want to start flying in congested areas, you need to obtain that A2 CofC. And also, if you wish to get insured, you would need at least the A2 CofC, ideally the GDC, for commercial operations. So just bear that in mind.
That's it. It's just all these different buzzwords, isn't it? It's a congested area, the uninvolved people around, and it's just having those little ticks. So yeah, spot on.
Awesome. So we'll talk a little bit about classes then and different types of drones, and it's important to understand that we will have a couple of different things popping up on the board relating to weights. It's referring to aircraft to be produced in the future. So you can't look at it and think, oh, well, my aircraft's less than 2 kilos, it sits here.
Yeah.
This is talking about CE-rated aircraft. So under the new drone laws, a classification system has been introduced. Aircraft will receive a class marking from C0 to C4 based on certain criteria, such as the weight, the speed, or the different safety features it has, such as a low speed mode. The class identification will then determine which subcategory of the open category you can fly in. So it's the weight of the aircraft, it's the class of the aircraft which determines where you sit first. So just to summarise it a bit, we'll start, I suppose, with class C0. So this is referring to our lightest aircraft. And something such as a Hubsan, such as this aircraft here, is something which would fall into it. So it's below 250 grams. With regards to that, we can fly it really close to people because it doesn't pose much threat. But realistically, we can't get much. We can't get much from this in terms of footage or etc. If we did need to.
But on a separate note, a tiny little drone like that is actually really good practice. So in terms of muscle memory and getting used to the drone, a lot of people, it's a good first option to kind of consider really. So if you are looking at a larger enterprise level drone, let's say looking at a treat, for example, that's a big jump to go straight in. So something like that, or something like the Mavic Mini, great little drone to get a bit of experience on, we say. So,
100%. I mean,
right.
I suppose ironically, this is harder to fly than the trees, really.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's more risk within the trees, but this doesn't have as much automation in it and stuff like that. And this specific one's just one that I just grabbed from my desk quickly in the minutes before we started this webinar. And it's something which we use around the office quite frequently in order to kind of reduce skill fade and to make sure that we've always got that muscle memory in times such as at the moment when we're not really doing much flying. We're not doing any flight assessments in person. All of our content's remote, so we're not getting a chance to go out and actually do much flying at the moment. And then all the other ones, we've got class C1, C2, C3, and C4. It literally just depends on the weight of the aircraft. Then we've also got legacy, which if you own an aircraft at the moment, this is where you fit.
A lot of questions that I'm getting on this, Duncan, is so I'm looking to buy a drone, but I'm really worried that in a couple of years' time, I'm going to have to throw it in the bin. I'm not going to be able to use it anymore. Sure. So yeah, can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've got obviously the transitional, the transitional classes. So let's say the A2 transitional class, which is going to cover everything from 500 grams to 2 kilograms. By default, if you want to start flying in the congested areas and fly, relatively close to people, get your A2 CofC, you're good to go. In terms of all of these, this is only applicable in the open category. So we're referring to how you use this A2 CofC qualification. If you go down the route of obtaining a GDC to then get the operational authorization, it doesn't really matter what aircraft you fly. When you get the permission from the CAA, it's a 2-page PDF, and it will allow you to fly either multi-rotor or fixed-wing unmanned aircraft up to 25 kilograms. Now, you note on your operations manual what aircraft you're flying, but you don't need to apply or do anything like that. So, say for example, you do your flight test on a DJI Mavic or an Inspire, you can go out and buy a truce, you add it to your operations manual, you're good to go, and then you can still maintain those distances of 50 meters. And it gets, it does actually get a little bit closer with the GDC course. You can fly within 30 meters for takeoff and landing, and then 50 meters in flight, but that 50 meters is a bubble. So you can take off with 30-meter radius, then provided you're relatively high, you can then overfly people, and it doesn't matter about the weight. You can do it with an aircraft that's 20 kilograms. Because at that point then you've done a huge amount of risk assessment, a huge amount of, of planning and preparation in order to get to that point.
Yeah, spot on. So yeah, that's it. It's another one of those little nuggets, really, isn't it? If you do go a little bit more training, yes, we've now got insurance, we've now got you can fly in different areas. So there's plenty of little hoops that we can jump through to take advantage of these new regulations. So yeah, point now.
100%. And I suppose we'll talk a bit about the how our courses used to run. I suppose for anyone that is probably quite familiar if you've trained with us in the past. So how our GDC course runs now, you'll see it is pretty much the same. But one thing to note, I suppose, is in terms of the actual qualifications we provide, the A2 is accessible as ever now. It's free to actually, I suppose, start the learning. and then £49 worth of VAT to actually start getting the certificates at the test. But that just means it's eventually over time more and more people are going to be able to do that, which is a great thing. It is good. What it doesn't mean is it means it's over the next couple of years it's going to be quite hard to stand out from the crowd. And I suppose if anyone watching this has looked at our GDC courses, you can see that we're accredited by Ofqual, and we've got level 4 and level 5 qualifications, a high standard. We're the only training provider to do that. We're LCAT approved. All of these little things are just things which would nudge you above the other person. If, say, for example, you are starting your own business and you're applying for tenders or contracts, or if you're hoping to do it yourself and apply for a job in the industry anyway.
Massive help. Yeah, it's all about standing out in the crowd. At the end of the day, if you are looking to do this commercially, then it is. It's all about getting that money in your back pocket, essentially, at the end of the day.
Return on investment.
So yeah, 100%.
So we'll quickly just, I know we talked about this quite a bit, but we'll quickly just sort of summarise this then. So for the GDC course itself, you do online e-learning with us. We have regular webinars. We have this virtual classrooms that have been pre-recorded. You can view them on demand. It's just one of us going through one of myself or one of the other professional course instructors going through the actual content. But then we also have what we're going to start delivering this Friday. It'll be for the A2 CofC this Friday, but in 2 weeks later it'll be for the GDC. We're calling these live accelerator sessions, where when you get to the end of your course, you spend a couple of hours with us. It's live. And it's something which we'll go over the syllabus, we'll do a couple of mock questions, and then we'll have quite a big interactive Q&A. And it's quite exclusive. We are going to limit the numbers because once we get above, let's say, for example, even 15 people, it starts to get quite hard for people to ask questions. So we are going to limit them, but we're going to start doing them regularly. And you get access to this for life. There's then an operations manual to write, and we provide you with a template on how to do this. Quite a comprehensive document at first, but it outlines your procedures and outlines to the CAA, so that when you apply, how you intend to operate. You'll then meet us and come do one of our practical flight assessments at our various nationwide locations. And after that point, you then obviously apply to the Civil Aviation Authority for your operational authorization. Now, that has to be renewed yearly. The qualification has to be renewed every 5 years. I suppose one thing to note is for anyone that's done this last year, if you do wish to do the GDC course, we're shortly going to be having a GDC conversion course. What I mean by conversion is that it'll exempt you from doing the practical flight assessment, so you just need to do up to here. Up to here. Up to here. Just up to there. So you just need to do the online learning, the theory test. We need to help you update your manual, but it's something that you've probably done already, and then you're good to go. We'll give you the certificate for 5 years.
Great stuff. Okay, in terms of the theory test, or the theory modules and the actual flight assessments, then it's very, very similar. But what little changes are there? What can we expect?
Sure. So I suppose one massive thing that we've done over the new year is we've changed the way that we've been delivering online examinations. So whilst quite commonly in the past we've been running classroom courses, we invigilate them in-house. One instructor to, let's say, 20 students, and we just do it that way around the UK. But times have changed. E-learning is the way to go, certainly for the theoretical aspect. And Copters, we've adapted with that. So now we've got your theory test. You can book onto the GDC course whenever you like, 24/7. You can access it 24/7. You can access all of our pre-recorded videos 24/7. And when you get to the end of the course, you can actually book in your examination with an invigilator, there and then. At minimum, we only allow, essentially, we need you to book it in within 72 hours notice. Mm-hmm. So you will need to finish the course. There needs to be a couple of days for you to actually do the exam. But the exam is remote. It can be booked 24/7, so you can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning if you like. There will be someone there.
It's very good.
It's a big change that's made it really accessible for people, particularly those working full time that are trying to, I suppose, distance learn this course part time.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, everyone seems to be either plenty of time on their hands. If you are fair, we do have 20% off, by the way. But also, plenty of people are working at the moment as well. So yeah, the way we set out our online learning, as Duncan said, it's so versatile. So if that's 10 minutes every night before you go to bed, or if it's like I did it the other weekend, I did the A2 CofC course when I was watching golf over the weekend. That's fine. However works for you best, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, it's super versatile stuff.
100%. I mean, like I was saying before, distance learning is the way to go. I've worked in kind of aviation for about 5-6 years now, both manned, from like the commercial aviation side of things to then drones as well for the same amount of time, kind of on and off. And throughout that, computer-based learning, CBT or e-learning, distance learning, whatever you want to call it, it's something which has always been there, and we've evolved with that, truly embodied it, and we've set up a really fantastic product.
Yeah, very good.
Cool. So I suppose this is just talking about the GDC course in a bit more detail.
Yeah, spot on. So in terms of the course, and as we've said, it's very similar to what the PFCO was. So in terms of the modules, we've now got an extra module in there, so there's now 9. The actual exam, so yeah, we'll do that through Proctor-U. In terms of the exam, how long is it? Is it an hour and 15?
I believe it's 70. I get 90 minutes.
Yeah, 90 minutes. So yeah, decent amount of time. The amount of questions you can see here, it's no longer 64 for anyone who's watching do the PFCO this last year or in the past. It's only 40 questions now, which is quite nice. After every module, when you're doing the online training as well, there is a little quiz. So multiple choice, you can go back through that as many times as you like. And that's the same for the full course. You can skip, pause, repeat. It's a tool for you to take advantage of. When we do the course, we do it in 3 days. But this is there at your disposal, isn't it? It's there to do it however you want to do it. So yeah, that might take you a few weeks. Generally, it's taking people 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah,
so
about that. Yeah, it's probably the best way to do it, really, if you are doing it part time. But there is no expiry date on it. It's, we're not like other training providers where I've been on courses before when 30 days to complete an e-learning course. It's something which it's a lifetime subscription. You sign up to CofC Academy, even if it's a free course, you get that lifetime subscription.
Yeah.
So that covers the theory. Obviously, with the ops manual review, this is a bit more bespoke. So we provide you with a template, and we need you to submit it. You upload it to us. A member of our training team, of our administrative staff, will take a look at it. We'll go through it, we'll review it, and we'll criticise it as much as we can, because we've probably had thousands of people go through the process with us, and we've seen all of the errors which the CAA will pick up, and they've started charging now, which it's not something you used to do a couple of years ago, where if you say for example you submit something, it has a problem, you resubmit it, and then isn't rectified. So we take that out of it. It's really important for us that all of our graduates applying to the CAA have an ops manual that will sail through, because it reflects on us. It reflects on the calibre and quality of students that are going through.
Yeah, 100%. And just on that point as well, this is one of the main reasons we have Offbot. So when you're in the industry, you're going to be representing us. So we need to know that we've trained you to that high standard. So yeah, it works both ways. It's going to help you win work, help you stand out. Also, it's good for us because we know we've trained you to a better standard. So we have had the feedback that our courses can be quite hard, quite intense at times, but we do like that because we know we're training you to the best standard possible. So yeah, absolutely, it's there for a reason. But yeah, in terms of ops manual, again, it is quite a stressy point, but we have workshops in place. We're holding your hand all the way through these different processes. So we'll go back and forth through our different teams. But yeah, essentially, you'll send it to us. We'll look and see what amendments and what changes you need to make. We'll send it back and forth. But yeah, we'll soon get you through that process. It won't be a stressy problem when we get there. And then obviously we have the actual practical. And again, it's all about safety. It's all about best practice, safe setup, and going through these different processes. So when you're out in the industry, it can be absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. And you'll do that with our training site.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
We haven't got many questions today. So Gerard said, with an A2 CofC, can you do a roofing survey?
Depends. Yes, but I suppose it depends on what category you're operating in. So if you think of the A2 subcategory, and let's say, for example, we'll use the Mavic as an example. But it's quite a popular aircraft.
Yeah.
So say, for example, I've done my drone, the registration, the flyer ID, and the operator ID. I've done the A2 CofC. In terms of a roof inspection, then Potentially, but it depends where it is. So you can find a congested area, yes.
Yeah.
What you can't do is overfly uninvolved persons, which is where it's going to cause problems. You need to have if you think of a 50-meter kind of cylinder around the aircraft, you can't let any member of the public or someone not involved in the flight encroach on that area. And if it is in quite an industrial or quite a congested area, then you will struggle. But it depends on where it is.
That's it. There's just a lot of factors that we need to now think about. And again, these courses they'll open that up. But are there any uninvolved people? It's that buzzword again. What sort of airspace you need? And there is a lot to think about. But generally, with the Mavic, yes, you can tick the box with the A2. But are you going to be confident to do that as well? So there's that side to it as well. So when you do the GDC, we're doing your practical assessment, you're doing your theory assessment, you've got your operations manual. We go into it in a lot more detail. So it's about 18 hours worth of training to do your GDC course. Your A2, like I say, that's how many hours would you say that is?
Probably about. It depends on the learner how it takes, but significantly more. So that's maybe sort of. What about 15 hours, maybe 15, 20 hours?
Oh, for the GDC or the A2?
For the GDC.
Yeah. So, and what's the A2?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's not that long.
No, probably about 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
To be realistic, but that's properly going through it. I think for a lot of people, certainly on some of the areas like I suppose like MET and principles of flight. If you've got aviation experience beforehand, this is something which is going to be a bit of a doddle to go through for some of it. Some of it's interesting, but it depends on how much experience you have.
It's true. Yeah. So it's about giving yourself confidence at the end of the day. Do you know the facts? Do you know how safe to do it? What's the level of risk? Again, and your drone will fall into all these different categories. But on paper, the A2 in some situations is fine. But do you want more training?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
A question I've had quite a lot on socials is about FPV. What do the restrictions or the new regulations mean for that?
Sure. So I suppose for anyone that doesn't know, FPV is referring to first-person view, and what they're probably referring to is using FPV goggles. So for those that are flying smaller aircraft that are usually around this size, it can be really immersive to use goggles, as you're flying. It makes it quite easy to fly. I've used them in the past and they're fantastic. Yeah. But if you just sort of take yourself back to what we were talking about previously about visual line of sight, one of the main stipulations is that you need to be able to have direct, unaided visual line of sight with the aircraft. And if you've got goggles on, then you can't do that. However, there is, the CAA provided guidance on ways to mitigate this. What they require is a competent observer stood directly beside you. Now, there's emphasis on directly beside you, so you would actually have to be next to you. Looking out the airspace, looking at the aircraft, making sure that they can provide a lookout for you. It's not as simple as it sounds, because you do need to have a good communication method for addressing, an aircraft coming from a certain way. And it's something which can be quite complicated, provided you do it right. But it's certainly possible. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, it's these new regulations, they are opening up, whereas in the past there wasn't all these options to do that. As Duncan said, it is good fun. It's very, very immersive, and we've had people in terms of like the film industry. So there might be a pilot who's actually flying, and then the producer might have the actual goggles on to see what's going on. There are loads of different ways you can use that to your advantage in the industry. So it's definitely worth practicing. But again, it's that safety, it's that risk, what your process is. Have you got a risk assessment in place? So just look at the big picture all the time.
That's all the questions we've got so far
Awesome.
today,
Well, we're doing well for time, we're really on 10 today, which is good. I suppose there are any questions that we need to run through?
To be fair, I think it's all been pretty good, to be fair. What I would say is we are going to be doing this more often now. We are getting a lot of questions during the week on our phones, on social media. It's just keep coming in. Keep sending them in, whether that is on the phone or if that is essentially just dropping us an email. By all means, get in touch. Awesome. All right, guys, thank you very much for today, though. Like I said, any questions, let us know. Hope you have a cracking day. See you later.
Awesome, thank you for joining.